Hey guys, welcome back to Friction Grand Rapids. Coach Bobby here today. Gonna talk about the one movement that's gonna help you build strength from your head to your toes. It's the deadlift. So the deadlift is probably one of the most important strength movements that you should be practicing because it's gonna teach you how to use your hips in a hinge pattern, which is the action that you would do in order to pick anything up off of the ground, either in the gym or in life, and it's gonna help you reduce injuries in life, but also improve your performance in the gym. So this is a movement where you might want to have a coach work with you on how you're doing it before you start training it. Otherwise, before we start moving in this one, we actually want to get tension in our body. So if you haven't learned the Valsalva maneuver from some of our other videos, this is one where you're definitely going to want to practice it because it's going to help us develop more tension in our spine and keep that rigid throughout this pattern. Generally, when we do that, it's going to be taking a big breath into your belly and locking your abdomen around that tension. From here, we recommend pulling the shoulders back to engage the lats and upper back, and then squeezing the glutes to get your pelvis in a neutral position. So once you have all that tension through your whole body, you're gonna relax the glutes and keep that core tight, shoulders tight, and you're gonna reach your hips back as if you're pushing them to the wall behind you, and you're gonna let your chest fall forward. We're gonna go down to about the knee, and this is the first pull, or the second pull in the deadlift, but we're learning it backwards. This would be our hang position for Olympic weightlifting. But in this position, we've got the shoulder over top of the bar, the hamstrings, muscles in the back of your thighs are loaded. And before we go any further down, we're actually just gonna stand up from here, squeezing the glutes and hamstrings to pull that weight up. And recommend just practicing a set of 5, maybe 10 here to get a good feel for this before going into the next part of the lift. So after Trina does a few, we're gonna have her come back to the hang position, and we're gonna cover that first pull in the deadlift. So from here, what we wanna do is actually keep our shin fairly vertical, unless we're a little bit taller athlete, and we're gonna think about sitting our hips back down in a chair, almost squatting into this position. So from here, we still wanna make sure we loaded tension into our hamstrings, and our shoulder is still over top of that bar. And then before doing the full movement, we'd actually have her just practice going from mid-shin, where the barbell would be if we had bumper plates on it, and she's gonna stand back up to that knee position, or that hang position. She's gonna go back down. So doing a set of 5 or 10 here, you're gonna really notice that your quads are working really hard, and that's the muscle we're gonna use to help us break the bar from the floor when we have heavy weight. After doing a handful of reps there, we're gonna put it all together. Stand up to the knee, pass through the knee, up to the hip, and then start working on making that a fluid, comfortable movement. Okay guys, so now that you've used a PVC pipe or an empty bar to learn the deadlift, that's still something you're gonna wanna do in your warm-ups for a deadlift, but now that you've learned it, we've got weights on it, the bar starts on the floor. So that top-down setup, we still wanna use that when we're lifting heavy weight or moderate weight or light weight, because it's gonna help us stay in a good position. So when Trina's about to deadlift this bar, she's gonna set her stance just like she did with a PVC pipe. She's gonna engage her glutes, engage her abdomen, tighten her shoulders as if she already has the bar in her hands. She's gonna unlock the glutes, keep that trunk tight, and hinge down and grab the bar. Now from here, before she moves the bar, what we wanna do is actually make sure that we have tension in the back of the thigh and that hamstring. Sometimes that may be just lifting the hips slightly so you feel that tension. But once you have that tension in the back of the thigh, you're gonna push into the floor, lift your chest up, and repeat. All right guys, so now that you know how to deadlift and you're practicing sets, building up into weight, there are a couple points of performance that you really want to be aware of. One is going to be bar path. So the nature of the movement is pretty straightforward. The bar is going to come straight up and down, but one thing we want to be aware of is that because in our setup, when we're on the bar and we're ready to lift the weight, our hips are behind the bar. So whenever we go to lift it up, that weight is actually going to drift forward a little bit. And it's something you're going to notice when you get into heavier weights. So what you're gonna have to do to balance out that hip drive is you're gonna actually have to keep a strong lat tension on the bar and keep that bar close. So one way to simulate that, if Trina were working on her deadlifts, is to have somebody pull the bar away, and she's gonna actually have to pull the bar back in, engaging her lats, and then she would go through her deadlift with that tension away. A little bit easier way to do that if you don't have a coach or a friend available is to take a band, loop it around the bar, anchor that on a post, set up on your bar, roll it in tight, make sure you have enough tension, and keep that tension on there throughout the deadlift. So that'll help simulate what you're trying to do with your lats to keep that bar in close. And then additionally, when you get into heavier weight, you're gonna have a lot more force on your lower back, so you're gonna have to balance that with a lot more tension in your abdomen. So the heavier you go, the more pressure you're gonna have in the back, the more intentional pressure you're gonna need throughout your abdomen when you're setting up and bracing against heavy lifts. Now that you are deadlifting, you understand the points of performance, you get a good feel for the movement, it's looking fluid, there are a few faults that you're gonna wanna avoid in your training. So we'll go through these one at a time, but really kind of think that while you're training, it's gonna be really useful for you to be taking videos of yourself as you're going through deadlifts so you can start to become aware of your own position and maybe identify some of these faults. So the very first one is gonna be any movement in the shoulder. This would be commonly expressed as a shrug. So Trina's gonna show us a few shrugs here that you might see in a deadlift, and that's just gonna be extra movement. So the thing that we wanna think about with our deadlift is that it is a hip dominant movement, meaning your shoulders aren't really doing a whole lot to move that bar. So kind of going back to our setup, we wanna pull those shoulders back, press them down, and even more advanced lifters may even push their shoulders forward because that's gonna sit that bar even lower. That's gonna allow you to load more weight, travel less distance, develop more hip strength. Cool? So pay attention to how you're moving your shoulder. Make sure that you're not doing a whole lot there. It should just be static tension with the shoulder. Another big fault is gonna be thoracic extension in the finish of your lift. So when you're looking at this one, somebody pulls the bar from the floor and then they lean back extra far. So what we really want to see with this, stop doing that. What we really want to see with this movement is that the lift is going to end when the knees and the hips are extended and that shoulder is behind the bar, not behind the hip. That's going to reduce tension on your lower back and help you avoid injury when you're training this one, either in a high rep or in heavy weight. And then the last one that's going to actually help you improve your performance if you can avoid this fault is having tension in the start. So when we talk about this, we get into our setup, we draw tension in our lats, our core is tight, our hamstrings are loaded. We're gonna push into the floor gently until we almost feel the weight lift up a little bit, or you hear the barbell ring. And what that is a very slight click, and that just tells you there's a little bit of slack out of the bar and you're ready to generate force. Thanks for tuning in and checking out this video on getting started with deadlifts in your training. I hope it helps give you a better understanding of the movement, avoid some pitfalls with the movement, and optimize your training. If you want to see more videos on technique and some lifts or exercises that you aren't using and should be using, like and subscribe. If you want to get some coaching and make sure that you have some professional eyes on this movement, check out frictiongrandrapids.com and schedule an intro for yourself.